This is a court receipt, and it's framed in a museum. This is a urinal, and it's also framed in a museum. This is a pile of sand. And guess what? Yeah, it's also in a museum, and I'm kind of obsessed. But why? Why does art like this end up in a museum? What does it mean? Hi, it's David G. What does the G stand for? The G stands for going to exhibitions. I feel like I don't really get half the things that I'm looking at, but I still enjoy going to them. This is how I want to be. Well, it's probably meant to be
look at the choice of materials,
separate law, unframed rough linen and the thick. But instead, I'll kind of just have a wander around, just point at a few things. Like the average Joe man can look at a piece by Da Vinci or by Mickey and look at it and go, yeah, that is a piece of art. You look at this and you scoff and you think, that's just a receipt. But then you look closer and you discover it is not just a receipt. It's a receipt with white items. Officially on the side, it said that the art was something to do with color. Personally, I think that you should collect all the receipts that have previously been displayed and you can see inflation over time. If we come together and we suspend the belief that this is just another form of tax avoidance, can I look at this poo-shaped thing on the ground, this pile of sand, this invisible sculpture, and come to gain something out of it? Okay, let's come to understand how did we get from this to this. And to do that, we have to do some research.
It's a research transition. I'm turning around to signify there's going to be a transition here, but I don't know how to edit.
I've already done the research. So here is a very brief, bad, incomplete, and very Western perspective of art history. Let's go back in time. Imagine a long history of increasingly accurate representations of visual things. Nature, form, landscape, religion, classical scenes, sculpture, things, places, mythology, people, blah, 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 blah. Until one day they were kind of tired and they said, hey, what if instead of just trying to be increasingly super accurate, we try to capture fleeting moments through color and brushstroke? Add the fact that photography has just started to become invented and they already kind of capture real things. That's basically Impressionism, the beginning of modern art. And then someone was like, okay, what if instead of just catching fleeting moments, we try to capture the feeling of moments, emotive and symbolic? It's basically post-impressionism. And then what if dreaming is better than being awake and you're tired of painting about reality? That's symbolism. And then you're like, okay, but why does color have to be realistic? Fauvism. And then what if the artist is emo? What about their feelings? Expressionism. Why have to paint? Collage. Canvas flat. Why not image flat? Geometric forms. Cubism. Picasso, I like it. What if embrace modernity, machine, and image 2D flat, but now moving through time? Futurism. And then we come to this. A wee-wee bowl turned 90 degrees. On a plinth, encased in glass, in a museum? To help me understand how to understand art, I read these 2 books. Ways of Seeing by John Berger helped me to see that looking can be a political act, and the context of where we see things really influence how we see it. So the setting of this suggests that it's art, right? I mean, it's still a wee-wee bowl. And then I did a bit of digging, and it turns out that this is considered to be one of the most iconic, absurd, and disruptive anti-arts of the 20th century, where 6 performance artists throughout time have wee-weed on it. It's inspired these subsequent artworks, and it poses a great philosophical question into the nature of art itself. All from a wee-wee bowl. But why? Imagine that you are part of a society that says, yeah, forget those Parisians and their elitist art establishments. We are a free society. Well, you have to pay the membership, but if you pay the membership, we will exhibit your art. Like, okay, I like these qualities. I mean, I am one of the founders, but yeah, let's test this out. So you go and you purchase a manufactured urinal and you sign it under the pseudonym R-Mutt and you submit it to the exhibition. And then it's the day of the exhibition and you look around And plot twist, where's the urinal that you submitted? It's nowhere to be found. You're like, where is it? Where is it? Turns out that your other founders, the members of the society, have suppressed it and they hid it away because they said that a urinal is not fit to be art. So you say, okay, Bundy's law, I'm out, I'm resigning because you guys are just hypocrites. Are so contradictory. Yeah, that goes against everything that we stand for. Who are you to decide what is art and what is not art? And this causes a stir. This causes like newspapers and people chatting and critics saying stuff. So why should something so vulgar and something that he didn't even make himself be considered art just because he like signed it and submitted it? Well, the argument was that he took an ordinary article of life, placed it so that its useful significance disappeared under the new title and point of view, created a new thought for that object. So it's really, what if art is less about the aesthetic and the material, and it's more about the idea? What if you're meaning to question art itself? What is the role of the artist? Can anything be art if the artist decides that it is art? This is really some of the philosophies that underpin conceptual art. And so Duchamp could really be considered the foredada of conceptual art. And so we go back to the art history timeline. What if image not moving, but representing the moving of the artist? What if not represent reality at all? Shapes. Ed Sheeran would be all up on that. I'm in love with the shape of you. That's basically abstract art. What if commercialization? What if performance can be art? What if video, sound, space? What if feminism? What if street painting is art? What if the advance of technology? So we've come to this point because artists throughout time, just like, you know, when you're 4 years old and you really have this awe and wonder about life, you just keep asking why. Why must it be realistic or have a story? Why must it be beautiful? I doubt that Fountain would have ever made it to a museum had it not been for the reaction surrounding it. Understanding the history helps you to understand it's really about expanding the barriers of thought, of innovation. Different forms of expression can really help you appreciate contemporary art in a different light, especially when sometimes that light is looking like a YouTube social experiment. Because what is this? How do you go to a modern art museum and understand the point of all this? I recommend that you put on the curtains are blue, but they could also not be blue. How? Instead of just like receiving something that's aesthetically pleasing to your eyes, you kind of have to question your own assumptions, your own experiences, and to question your own interpretation. This could just be a pile of sand because one day the artist was like, okay, that's banter. So I looked at this and I was like, I don't want to touch it. But then I was like, what if this is just a social experiment? Like, what if they're like, there's a camera here, here, and here? What if John can Eunice? There was also like an interpretation to go alongside this. And it reminds me of what Da Vinci said.
When he said, it should not be hard for you to stop sometimes and look into the stains of walls or ashes of a fire or clouds or mud or like places in which, if you consider them well, you may find really marvelous ideas.
So, you know, like sometimes you look at a cloud and you're like, oh, that looks like a fish. Or you look at your own excrement and you're like, oh, that looks like my ex. This artist looked at how art is contained within its natural forms. And it's really interesting when you start to question, like, is that a good meaning? If I just took this and I plonked it outside a Greg's construction site, would this still be art? What I've learned is that you don't have to agree with art. You don't even have to enjoy it. For example, you see this banana and you find that it's taped to a wall. It's not only taped to a wall, but it's been displayed in a museum. It's not only been displayed at a museum, but it's also been sold at an auction for over $120,000. And it's not only been sold at an auction, but it's also part of a performance piece where another artist took the banana from the wall, ate it, recorded it, and posted it on Instagram with the caption, "I really love this installation. It's very delicious." Smiley face. Hashtag hungry artist. Hashtag eating a banana. Firstly, I'm not gonna lie, that's really funny. But you find out that security guards would guard it whilst they're changing the banana because it is a real banana and it will rot. In a world where there's so many social problems and there's so much inequality, something like this just feels like a very absurd, disconnected, and kind of insulting activity for the wealthy. It's like rich people just doing rich people things. Although I will say a banana being sold for $120,000 without a club card is not that far from reality. So maybe they were actually ahead of their time? do you take from this banana taped to wall? Is it a symbol of capitalism gone astray? Is this banana an ironic criticism of the art institution from someone embedded within? The artist has a history of suspending things and like, just look like, this is the same guy who made the 18-karat solid gold toilet and he titled it America. Or is it as something as classic as that whole, slipping on a banana peel gag? Is it instead just meant to bring joy and humor and lightness to something that's kind of seen as highbrow? People who decide what goes into museum are called curators. And they decide, is this worthy of reflecting the pulse in our culture, of our society, and essentially the narrative of our time? But there's an issue with this because particularly in the UK context, ethnic minorities have a really hard time in the arts and entertainment industry. The industry has a real stigma of being white-centered, but also quite elitist and classist as well. So who are the curators? Who works in these museums? You'll see that the people who work in the museum is a predominantly white space to reflect multicultural. And it's fair to say, like, okay, why would you go to a cultural space that you feel possibly isn't reflecting you in the best light? Isn't it actually exciting, the fact that you can have such a diverse and varied artistic expression? There's something to be gained from weird art. Like, existence is one of the weirdest and most varied things, and I think we need unbounded creative art that reflects people's varied landscape. Art can be highly personal for the artist to make and for the viewer to receive. When you look at a piece of art, in some way you bring yourself into it, like your experiences with the world, your dreams, your hopes, your fears, and that shapes your relationship with that piece of art. The question is really, who is to say anything? Sometimes you want chocolate, sometimes you want mint. You're like, yo, that ice cream's got mold on it. But maybe you like blue cheese. Maybe you're like, hey, I don't even like ice cream, why can't we reduce it down to its natural form, which is milk? And it's like, hey, that's okay. We got that too. And then you're like, what about oatmeal? Yes, fine. What about almond? Yeah, we got almond. What about hardly? Yeah, we got almond. Who wrote this script? If you really want to get the fullness of these cultural spaces, you do have to put in a little bit of brain cells and work to kind of get something out of it. Also, a lot of times, art doesn't just exist in the vacuum of the walled museum. Like, a lot of us appreciate Van Gogh for his artistry, his masterful skill, talent, so beautiful, but I think what makes his art even more compelling to have survived for this long is his story. We've all heard of it. It's the story of a troubled, starving artist. He's ridiculed by the town, but even in the torment of his own mind, he's able to create something so beautiful. So learning a little bit about who the artist is can really help put their vision into context. It's important to remember that when you see contemporary pieces of art that are worth like just insane, ridiculous amounts of money, that's a very small portion of the art market as a whole. Instead, go to your local galleries, support your favorite artists on social media. Art doesn't have to be like in the National Portrait Gallery to have value to Next you. Time we go to a modern art museum, we could just start a question like, what's the context? What was the artist trying to say? Does it matter what they're trying to say? How do I relate to it? Does it even mean anything? You don't have to be right or wrong. You can have your cake and call it BS too. Boop. I mean, you could say that I have art for me to show. Fear of missing out on intellectual development and cultural enlightenment and understanding.